Good evening, all. I am Paul Goldstein. I am the chair of our Waterfront Parks and Cultural Committee, and I welcome you to the meeting. Let me introduce a couple of key people who you've already heard a little bit from. One is the co-chair of the committee, Andrew Zelter, and he's been asking a few questions already. And he's very active with Hudson River Park, among many other issues. And let me also introduce Diana Sweetai, who's our staff member. She's Director of Planning and Land Use, and she's very helpful for the Community Board. And before we get into the agenda, let me just welcome a new member of the committee, Jess Coleman. Welcome aboard. Congratulations. Hope you enjoy your community board participation, and certainly don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or anything, and certainly dive right in.
Great. I won't be shy. Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move the agenda around just a bit, and we are going to start with Hudson River Park. Our main guest is Noreen Doyle. She is president and CEO of, that's Chief Executive Officer of Hudson River Park, a position she assumed back in June of this year. She's been with the trust for quite some time, from 2004 to 2021. She was executive vice president. And during that period, she worked on many of the park's signature design, construction, environmental, and planning initiatives. From 94 to 2001, she not only worked for the trust, but its predecessor organization, Hudson River Park Conservancy. And let me just throw in that Noreen also, before all that, served as the assistant district manager for Community Board 4 here in Manhattan. So she's not a newbie to community boards and what we do and what you guys do. So we're very happy to have Noreen with us. And why don't you just tell us how you're doing and what's going on with the park? And
Great.
welcome.
Well, thanks, Paul, and thanks, everyone. I want to just keep this very informal tonight, so I'm happy to follow whatever procedures Paul lays out. But you know, I have been coming to Community Board 1 since my 20s. When I was first hired at the park's predecessor organization, my title was Community Liaison. And one of the first assignments that I had was to go to all of the community board meetings, including Community Board 1. And there was a design liaison that was paid for by the Hudson River Park Conservancy at that point, given to each of the 3 community boards abutting the park. Yours, I think, was Ken Smith, if I'm remembering correctly. Who still lives down there, I know. And the idea was to kind of channel feedback about the park back to Hudson River Park from a community's perspective. So as Paul said, I've been working on the park for an incredibly long period of time, but with many of you for a very long time as well. And it's an honor. And obviously it's something that I feel really proud of, proud to be tapped to be the head of the park at the moment, but also will very, very much say that it truly, the park's success is the product of all of us. And I really mean that from the heart. Like this project was not, Paul knows this because he was around at the beginning as well. It was not a shoo-in that this would ever get approved or built or anything else like that. And the fact that we've reached this milestone collectively together is a testament to all of us. So I thank all of you as well for advocating for the park and being protective of it as we are. You know, its success really links directly back to the people who use it and care for it. And I mean that. I also want to say that, you know, I'm joined tonight by Kate O'Malley. Kate, can you say hi for a second and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kate O'Malley. I'm the AVP for Design and Construction, and I'm going to be managing the Estuarine project on behalf of the trust, and Noreen will talk a little bit more about that. But
Right. So Kate doesn't, she's underselling herself as she does, but all of these projects that we are doing with design and construction right now, Kate is heavily involved in so many of them. And really, again, if you came in at the beginning while Andrew and I were chatting, we have a relatively small team, a few people in each of our departments really. And, you know, together we kind of work to kind of create all aspects of the park. I know many of you know Madeline Wills. Madeline, when she was talking to new people, people we were interviewing, she used to say like Hudson River Park is like its own small city. Basically everything that the city has to deal with, whether it's public safety or deliveries or, you know, planning or IT or, you know, all of those things come together as part of the park, all these different government agencies that are here. And really, that's what it takes to run the park. People from all of our departments kind of thinking 360 about how the pieces come together. So what I thought I would do tonight is we're going to tell you about the estuarium, since that's, or, you know, where we are on that, since that is in your own backyard. But first, I'm going to do a very, very quick overview of some of the other things that we are busy doing right now, since the world doesn't end at Canal Street, and since many of you probably jog or walk or do other things in the park as well. So we've been busy. We've been very busy for the last roughly 6 months, and we have awarded more than $100 million in construction contracts over the last 6 months for several park areas that we have been planning for a very long time, and that until the last couple of years did not have funding for it. Some of you may have participated in the community design processes that we had for Gansevoort or Pier 97, and some of you may have seen these in various publications, but if you haven't, you know, you should know about these because they are important additions of public open space in the city. So on this slide, you are looking at images associated with the Gansevoort Peninsula. Gansevoort is in the meatpacking district of the park. It's basically just a little bit south of Little Island. You're a little bit south of 14th Street. And this is a 5.5 acre park area that, is actively under construction. We'll show you some more images in a minute. But we just, at our most recent board meeting, approved multiple contracts. We have 11 contracts associated with the park construction at Gansevoort. Each of those is, you know, we have to go through public procurement, minority and women businesses, service disabled veterans. Like, there's a whole lot of aspects of getting each of these contracts in the pipeline. And I congratulate Kate and her colleagues on that. Similarly, at Pier 97, which is the northern end of the park at 57th Street, we've approved a number of contracts now to advance that section of the park. And then we're also doing other things that if we were not building just new park areas, we would be calling capital construction projects. But one example of those is restoring a piece of public art in the northern section of the park. This happens to be called Private Passage. It's by an artist named Malcolm Cochran. And as you can see, it has some damage. A lot of the damage was caused by Hurricane Sandy. When water infiltrated the ship in the bottom. It's a recreation of a Queen Mary stateroom inside the bottle. So that mysterious photo in the middle there of the toilet bowl is actually from, if you were looking in the portholes, you would see that. And you're seeing rust there because water got inside the bottle during Sandy. So that whole bottle, that whole very large sculpture is going to be removed from Clinton Cove in the northern area of the park this fall. and transported, and a high quality restoration will occur, and it'll come back to the park hopefully in the spring. So here we are at the Gansevoort Peninsula. There is a very large ball field that is part of this park area, which the sports community advocated strongly for. But because this area is so unusually large for us, this is actually landfill, not a pier. It gives us the opportunity to introduce other features that are equally important. So on the south side, we have an engineered beach that is resilient. And that was a big part of the standard for building this. There's also a kayak kind of launch area here that you see in this kind of, it's kind of a darker gray from this view. The sculpture that you see above it opened earlier this year, Day's End, by the artist David Hammonds. That was paid for by the Whitney Museum. There is a kind of structured beach on what we call the upland area adjacent to the engineered edge. And at the northern end of the site, we're excited that there is a tidal salt marsh and a number of submerged habitat features that are going to be enhancing the estuarine habitat on the northern edge. There's also a park building that will have bathrooms, of course, a small concession, and a park maintenance area. And it has a green roof, and basically it's actually several individual small buildings linked by that green roof. We are doing active construction there. The project is expected to open in spring 2023. And this slide gives you a sense of all of the contracts that are currently under construction and that have already been approved. So we have 100% of the funding needed for this project. We are actively doing construction, and we have mounds of soil and other things on site that you could see if you were jogging past there right now. One of the curiosities of Hudson River Park is that it actually includes 2 inland parks that are located on the eastern side of Route 9A that were originally built by the State Department of Transportation as part of the construction of Route 9A. One is 14th Street Park, which is relatively small. It's near Chelsea Market. And the second one is known as Chelsea Waterside Park between 22nd Street and 24th Street, basically opposite Chelsea Piers and the Chelsea Cove section of the park. A couple of years ago, we redid in its entirety the playground and the basketball court as what we called phase 1 of Chelsea Waterside. And we are now undertaking phase 2 of Chelsea Waterside, which basically is everything else. Today, if you, well, until a couple of weeks ago, you would have been able to walk down 23rd Street, and there was a very wide paved area in this zone that is called Main Field Overlook and Comfort Station. And basically when Chelsea Waterside was built, it predated the park. So Chelsea Piers existed, but the green landscaped area on the other side did not exist yet. And it was kind of, I mean, the park has been very heavily used, very successful, but it was not the very greenest of places. There was a lot of pavement there. And in some ways it was a very programmed park, but not necessarily a park where you would linger unless you were participating in one of the specific programmed elements. So right now we are expanding the dog run, similar to the one that you have in Tribeca. We're creating a small dog run and a larger dog run with water features. We are expanding, not the size of the ball field itself, the striping for that will be the same, but the zone around the ball field will be enlarged also with artificial turf. And that will enable kind of the informal pickup activities or little siblings playing on the sidelines, or it just basically creates more space for play within the kind of fenced athletic field area. And then the main central area will be very much greened. There'll be a permanent picnic area created, and at long last, the public restroom that the community has long desired. We are again looking at sustainability here very seriously. The park, the building, for example, reuses granite that is currently on site at benches, for example, and the cladding on the building incorporates that. It also has solar panels. And so we are greening this area significantly. Pier 97, as I mentioned, is at the northern end of the park at 57th Street. This is our northernmost public pier. The pier directly to its north is a Con Edison fuel transfer facility that is part of the park. And the pier to the north of that, which is our northernmost pier, is a Department of Sanitation Marine transfer station. The piers just to the south are not part of the park. They were carved out. They're the passenger ship terminal and New York City EDC piers. So Pier 97 is really the only opportunity for significant public open space in this geographic area along the waterfront. And the design for this pier includes, if you look at kind of the top of the photo there, I don't think, can you see my cursor when I do this? No, yes?
No.
Slightly. Okay, so there is a sloping, what's called a belvedere, kind of a sloping ramp that goes up the northern side of the pier that will provide a nice overlook. And there is also a lawn that actually gradually slopes, gentle slope to the south, so that if you're lounging on the lawn, you can have a comfortable position, but also enjoy river views. The western end of the pier is a what we call the sunset deck. There is a pretty ambitious playground that is on the eastern side. And there is another sports court area, somewhat, it's actually turf, right, Kate? It's turf. It is about probably the same size as Pier 26. I actually haven't compared that. Kate, does that seem about right to you?
Yes, that's about right.
Okay. So again, we have approved all of the design contracts associated with the pier itself. I'm sorry, did I make that smaller for you? Sorry. Yikes. Is that large again? Okay. We've approved all of the design contracts for this. We have approved the design contracts or the construction contracts for the building, which is the navy blue, but we are still doing the design for the area in orange. We received a federal transportation grant for that zone, so we will be working with the New York State Department of Transportation to fulfill their design standards for that area. We want to better the bikeway, which is kind of an interim bikeway in that area. It's an interim esplanade, and we'd like to provide a more seamless connection into our neighbor Riverside Park south to the north at 59th Street. So we will be working with the state to try to have an integrated entrance there. That is it for the slides that I brought. Before I close the deck and we switch topics, does anyone have any questions on that piece of it?
Anyone on the committee have anything they want to say at this stage, or should we keep going?
I would have one question,
Okay, David, go ahead.
if I may ask. Pier 97, which street is that?
57th Street.
57th Street. Is there any contemplated facility for its use from the waterside for any marine activity?
That area has extremely shallow water surrounding it. So we are building in the infrastructure for a historic vessel as part of this, but whether there is a historic vessel that absent dredging, that is not part of this project, nor part of any environmental reviews that the trust has ever done. Unknown whether that would be able to be done, but we are building the infrastructure in at this juncture.
Oh, you are putting the infrastructure in?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's good to know. Thank you very much.
Okay, I do not see any other hands up, so
Paul,
yes, go.
sorry, I'm on my cell phone and couldn't find the raise hand button. I just wanted to make one quick comment if I might.
Sure.
So Noreen referenced Pier 26 and Gansevoort, and I think you've heard me say this before, that the model they used to engage the community and solicit community feedback, I think is a model that we should hold out as the gold standard. I think the ideas that came from the community are the result of, in the case of Pier 26 and the design for Gansevoort, incredible, multifaceted, multi-use facilities that provide recreation, passive, habitat, and ecological. So I'd like to see us really get behind that as the model that, we look for and promote with all of these projects, whether it's Hudson River Park Trust, Battery Park City Authority, and even perhaps the Parks Department.
Or maybe even EDC on the east side of the community.
Or that as well. Yep, that as well.
Yep, good thought. Thank you, Andrew. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so Noreen, why don't you continue then?
So I'll stop sharing the screen so that we can see each other better there. We obviously are not just doing design and construction. There are a lot of other things that we do in the park as well. The Estuarine Sanctuary, I know that various members of our staff, Carrie Roble, Tina Walsh, etc., have been to you about the Tribeca Habitat Enhancements Project, which is finishing up hopefully this week at the Pier 32 pile field. The textured piles are being installed starting today. That is active. Our board of directors just approved the Estuarine Sanctuary Management Plan that we spent several years working on, and it was referred to the Department of Environmental Conservation as is required. So that is another thing that I know we have presented on in the past. Related to our sanctuary obligations is the long-planned estuarium, and that is in your neck of the woods. So we, for a very long time, I know Alice, I think Alice is here. We've been asked what's up with the estuarium many times in the past. Carrie, I know, presented the results of a study that actually Kate was the person stewarding by Cambridge 7. Last year during COVID, we were lucky to get a grant from DEC to help us think about the tanks, the unique mechanical and other requirements that are associated with hosting live animals in a building. And I know you've heard about that aspect of it before, but we still don't have a building design, and we still don't have all the money for this building. And I can assure you we have tried many, many, many times to get the money for this building, as we have with still unfunded other sections of the park. But what we have decided to do now is to go ahead and advance an RFP for a design team for the estuarium. So I'll just say it again. We don't have all the money for it. We don't have a design for it yet, but we think that maybe by going ahead and hiring, hopefully, a qualified, high quality design team, we can accelerate the fundraising aspect of this, have a better sense of the cost estimate for the building, and do other things that just generally seem prudent for advancing planning. And I'd like to ask Kate, who is an architect, to walk us through the kind of RFP that she is drafting right now.
Hey, thanks, Noreen. So as Noreen said, I'm Kate O'Malley. I'm the AVP for Design and Construction, and I'm going to be managing this project. I've been with the trust for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was with the City Parks Department as the Director of Architecture. So I have some experience managing and getting park buildings built in city parks. So hoping to employ that expertise along with what we learned from the study that Noreen mentioned that was done with Cambridge 7 last year. I don't want to rehash all of that in detail, but because I know that you heard from Carrie, but Cambridge 7 is known for their work with aquarium, and they brought in a number of specialists, which allowed us to really nail down some technical requirements that we just wouldn't have anticipated without their specialty expertise. So that sort of information is being built into the RFP, which is being developed. The goal is to get the RFP out by the end of the year. So then we'll have a design team and we can start the community engagement. We can start coming up with concepts. And as Noreen mentioned, we can start developing a stronger estimate. But, you know, some of the really interesting things that we learned from the study from last year were about the mechanical systems, or a number of different options, but we're really interested in understanding how these systems are maintained. We intend to operate this building ourselves, so that's a really important aspect. We found out like the type of utilities that these things require, the power requirements, the weight of the tanks. We also learned that there are some specialty spaces we wouldn't have anticipated, and they're not large, but we're really glad that we can include that type of information in our sort of conceptual list of spaces to include in the RFP. So for example, you know, if you're going to run an aquarium facility, you need a dedicated, well-ventilated space to prepare the food for the fish. You know, so you can imagine that you wouldn't want to be cutting out fish and having that next to your office, like things like that, that I wouldn't have anticipated. You know, I've designed nature centers before, but not, you know, I've not worked with the specific program. So we got a lot of really valuable information with that, and it's all being sort of built in. As Noreen said, there's no design, but we did develop an idea of a building program. We're targeting about 10,000 square feet. You know, the broad uses are classroom spaces in support of large area that showcasing tanks with animals from the Hudson River. There are a number of support spaces for that, mechanical spaces for the tanks. The space I mentioned about the fish. There's also some other requirements. There's a small office, and there's also going to be sort of a science lab space that is used by staff, but also visible by visitors. And that's sort of where we've gotten to, sort of just working through the technical requirements and the various tasks that we need the designers to complete. And we're hoping to get that out by the end of the year. Noreen, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. So, I mean, I just think in case people don't understand program, can you just rephrase what we mean when we do that in an RFP context, and then what that ends up becoming through the design process?
Sure. I mean, really, an architectural program is a list of required or desired spaces. You know, so for example, we want to have 2 classroom spaces, and we've discussed like approximately how many people we want to accommodate. So then you arrive at an approximate area. It's not a design, it's just sort of a requirement. We want 2 classrooms, and it's, you know, at approximately 1,500 square feet. So we have a list of spaces and things that we need. We have a general sense of the size of these things that we're hoping to accomplish, but we don't really have a layout per se, or we don't know how the spaces align. We just know that we need these things and that they will be of a certain size. And so it's sort of just a starting point for a design team to take that and ask us more questions and listen to the community and see what priorities are, what sort of adjacencies make sense, and then to develop a plan from there.
Could you just very quickly describe what an estuarium is for some of the new people around, and also point out where we're looking to put it?
Sure. I believe estuarium is we took estuary, which the Hudson River is an estuary, and aquarium, and we made our own word, I believe. I've not seen it used otherwhere, but I could be incorrect. And the goal is that it's a learning space. It's sort of a community public-facing facility that we will be running that is for education and research that's ongoing in the river. And so there will be tanks showcasing the animals from the river, similar to the space that the River Project currently runs, the wet lab at Pier 40. There will be more tanks than they have there, and there'll be some, you know, additional features, but it's basically an education and research facility. Noreen, did I
Yeah, could I, so I think actually Kathy Drew, for those of you who remember her, she may have been the person who coined the word estuarium. It is actually a term that is used in our enabling statute in the Hudson River Park Act. And it is a use that has been a core part of the park plan for the Tribeca area since the dawn of time, or since the dawn of park planning time. So we view it as one of our obligations to fulfill as part of the core design of the park. The idea, the 400 water acres roughly that are within Hudson River Park are a designated Estuarine Sanctuary by state law. They are under ultimately DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation owns the land under waters there. And our water within the park is of national significance in terms of providing habitat for fish. It's a very, very important zone. And so because the original Kathy Drew River project originated on Pier 26, the idea for the estuarium, this research and education center, has always been planned to be in Tribeca. So the specific zone where it would be is if you are approaching Pier 26 or Pier 25, there's a large area that is not built yet. And there are two uses that would happen in that area. One is the science play area that I'm sure you've seen banners on the construction fence. There are banners. Hudson River Park Friends has completed, I believe, the fundraising campaign for the science play area with the sturgeon fish. You may have seen pictures of that. Those pictures have been out there for a long time now, and that was done by Olin, the designer for Pier 26. And then adjacent to that on the northern side, but not in the visual corridor. It would be the building or the space where the estuarium could be. So we have to size the building so that it will not block the views from any of the adjacent streets. So Paul, help me out on is it late? It's not Lake Street. It's Northmore.
Oh, yes,
Right.
right. So it's right at the end of Pier 26.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Eastern edge.
Yes.
So that's where we're talking about this going. So that's good. That's very exciting. And that's a good update. Let me now call on Richard Corman, who's a member of our committee, and he's actually sort of taken the helm of the River Project now that Kathy has moved on. So Richard, you're on.
Yeah, thank you, Paul and Noreen and Kate. That's absolutely great news to hear that you're stepping forward and starting to do something. I think you're right that to break the bottleneck of financing, you probably need to show some substantive, something that looks pretty to potential funders, and that usually works a whole lot better than just a concept.
Mhm.
Just to clarify, the location is to the east of the walkway. So it's not really quite at the end of the pier, it's the other side of the walkway, but otherwise perfectly described by everybody. So first of all, I want to say thank you. I'm really delighted to hear that you're doing that. And I have suggested in our preliminary discussions for capital here that perhaps Community Board 1 could request a capital infusion for the estuarium. I don't know to what degree we can be successful, but anyway, I'm lobbying for that. I have a question or two about the RFP. The first is are you continuing to contemplate a flow-through system the way the current wet lab, which is to say water from the Hudson. Sorry, somebody say something?
You broke up for a minute, so just repeat that.
Oh, so I was asking whether in the RFP, What you're asking for is consistent with the current functionality and the concept of the current wet lab on Pier 40, which is a flow-through system, namely Hudson River water pumped through the tanks, and the marine life live in their natural habitat. And as far as functionality is concerned, the various scientific project capabilities and the citizens' water quality testing capability that are there now. Is the RFP contemplating the inclusion of all of the functions that are there today and that kind of tank structure?
So one of the things that Cambridge 7 did for us was, and the director of the National Aquarium, not the director, like main director, but the director of all the aquatic systems at the National Aquarium was one of their sub-consultants. And we knew Cambridge 7 because Kathy Drew found Cambridge 7 to start with. So they were a fantastic team to work with. And we learned and discussed a lot about the pros and cons of flow-through versus non-flow-through systems. And they frankly were thinking that we might want to have some hybrid systems. Pros include that you actually, because the water is the same temperature as the fish, you don't have to worry about controlling temperature and all of the sensitive systems that are very, very important for maintaining fish health. If there are, you're bringing fish in and out of different temperatures and transition tanks and all of these other things like that. Cons include, as we know, Richard, that the Hudson River water is really murky. And your visibility for the public is diminished for certain types of tanks if you have only flow-through systems. So we haven't made a decision at this point. Flow-through, I will also say, requires additional environmental approvals from regulatory agencies. So it's not just us deciding. But I think we see the value of flow-through systems, but we might also want to introduce a few tanks that are, just clearer, easier to see, give you more flexibility with the type of tank, and frankly, create more engagement from some visitors with some fish. But, that's the kind of thing that we will have to decide further as we talk with agencies and the design process and, environmental groups and others about the kind of continued pros and cons of doing that.
So, yeah, I recall certainly that the Cambridge 7 was looking to advocate or at least explain the concept of a hybrid environment, if you will. And it makes sense. It certainly does. I think it's also going to allow a 12-month operation instead of what's today, which is just spring to winter, which is great. Could we get a chance to take a look at that RFP and maybe perhaps provide some comments before it goes out?
I don't think we're ready to promise that, but I don't think there's going to be very much of a surprise in the RFP. As Andrew said, you guys haven't vetted the RFP for Pier 26, but we engage in community process. I think that's typically our model, and I think that's more likely to be what we would do.
But we'll have a chance to
engage in community process once a designer is established. Yes, for sure. I mean, we want this to work. We want this to work from a science perspective and from a community perspective and from an educational perspective. We want it to work in all ways, and we never would say that we have all the answers ourselves.
Right. Well, I've always known that of you, Noreen.
Yes, I was going to ask about the community board's involvement, but you've answered that to a degree, but we'll continue to refine that and try to make sure the board has an appropriate role in reviewing all that.
But thank you. I think that's really a great step forward.
Yeah, we're excited about it, honestly. I think, Richard, you said it well. If you have to explain what's an estuarium, some pretty pictures might help accelerate this at this point. Right. And some substance behind it, right? A real cost estimate, other things like that.
Right.
Let's call on Alice Blank.
Hi, I really just wanted to say hi, Noreen, and congratulations again. It's great to see you, and thanks, and nice to meet you, Kate. Yeah, I think I'm on the same wavelength as Richard here with questions about the, I was pleased to hear Kate mentioning listening to the community. And I just wanted to get a better sense, so we don't run into trouble going forward, is exactly how that will happen vis-a-vis the RFP. It sounds like we won't see it, and that's understandable. But at what point and how will you engage the community in the process of the design of the building?
I think it's the same basic concept that we did for 26 Gansevoort and 97. So you hire a design team and then they need a chance to get certain technical, like get their education level up about the the platform, our traffic concerns, the proximities, our engineering standards, lots of other things like that. It's more productive if they understand the site that they're going to be asked to deliver something in than if we just promise a meeting right away. So that's what we have always done previously. I also think that they need a chance to kind of absorb the Cambridge 7 study, which is really got wonky level of detail about some of the tanks and specific fish species that can be in tanks together and other things like that. I think I know Carrie presented like tanks to you previously, but that level of educational and science component is important. And so it's not just a building, it's really, this needs to be a place that fulfills an important part of the park's core mission, as well as being a building that fits well into a specific neighborhood and neighborhood section of a park. So I think that normally this is in the early concept stage, Kate, that we do this. Kate's an architect, so Kate, what would you add to or correct what I just said?
No, I think that's right. They'll do their initial investigations, and then once they have a baseline to work from, we'll be setting up meetings to solicit input and get ideas about things, and they'll work on concepts, and we'll be back, and it'll be sort of a bit of an iterative process.
So I think specifically, one of the things that we would probably work on initially is kind of almost more like floor plan kind of concept, like what proximities, what uses need to be next to each other, things like that. And I think that that's, an initial area where we would be talking to the community about that. I don't think in this case it necessarily starts with a visual design. I think it should start with like functionality in this case.
Yeah, I mean, and is part of the RFP include a landscape architect, or is it going to be the same? Like, was it Olin who did the play pier, area to the south? I would think that's essential, and I'm not sure. I think as valuable as the programming is in terms of public engagement on that. I think it's going to be an incredibly critical component will be how that building meets the highway, the street, the access, all of that will be of great interest, obviously, to the community, and what it looks like also, and how big it is. So I guess these were things I assume would be, provided after this RFP is issued. And you said at the end of the year, so we're looking for something in like a meeting in December or January. This would be.
No. So we will issue an RFP, which is a competitive process.
Right.
Our board has to approve a contract, and it's public procurement, etc. So I would not expect a contract to be approved until late-ish winter. And then they need to get this they need to get educated. So maybe spring.
Great. Thanks a lot, Noreen and Kate.
But I think, if there are things that the community board wants to do in advance of that to kind of, I mean, we've had things like this where if you want to tell us your perspective about the site or things that, we should be making sure we know your perspective on from very from the get-go. There's nothing that requires us to be in the room answering questions with, like that from you. You could initiate it, things that you think are important for us to consider. Happy to have you do that.
There's a strong preference at community boards to be involved early and not to sort of just be handed a plan to review.
Oh, no,
So
of course.
that's the main thing that we want to avoid, so that we have early, opportunity to have some conversation about what we're looking for. And, obviously you take that back and mix it up, and eventually you'll come back with something.
Absolutely. And I mean, I do think that given that we've three different community boards gotten 3 sets of happy people about Gansevoort 26 and 97 speaks to our commitment to that process.
Yeah, well, we could definitely do it, no doubt.
Yeah, Paul, I might suggest that we do that maybe when the RFP is issued, that might be a very good time for you all to come back so that we could engage the community on thoughts they might have, about just those questions as you start to discern who you'd be, communicating with ultimately as a designer. And my last question,
Alice, can I just clarify that? I'm not really following you, because like the RFP itself is basically going to say, we're looking for a design team to do this in approximately this geographic area, approximately this size for approximately this program, but it's not going to make further decisions than that. I think that our engagement would be when we are enhanced by having a qualified design team at our sides, able to hear you directly as you're making comments. Or you could also kind of independently, if you wanted to, just tell us some of your own concerns about the site, or we want to make sure you think of this, that, and the other thing, so that day one, when there's somebody on board, you could give us a white paper or something if you wanted to. I'm not asking you to do that, but that's version 2 of that.
That's all you need, right? No, I was just suggesting that when we see those very parameters you're describing in the request for proposal, that would help, I think, to better understand the precise things that are being looked for, and then maybe that would be a good time. But I agree that doesn't necessarily have to be, that isn't the end run. Obviously, it's just another time to review and know exactly where the building is, footprint, some of the things that I assume will be defined in the RFP.
Well, the RFP will give our best guess currently, but so it might say, approximately 10,000 square foot building, and that's size based on not blocking visual corridors from the existing site. So but if it's 9,000 or whatever, or that's the kind of thing that depends on the design process ultimately. And we might say, well, we think it's about X many thousand square feet of classroom space versus tank space. But again, the magic, and you're an architect, is when it all comes together and you try to put it together and you figure out, oh, I didn't leave enough room for the kids' backpacks when they're coming into the building. Oh, we need room for that, or whatever it is. So I just hope that all of you, when you see the RFP, it's not that is the design. It is the starting point for hiring a design team, and then we do all of this process.
Exactly. So no, I think I have to assume everyone is understanding that. Just one more question is, I assume there will be a charge to enter this?
Not necessarily. I mean, we don't charge our kids and our other things. We have to figure that operationally. So we serve thousands of kids a year without charges or with waived charges. And we're not planning to charge everybody, but maybe there would be a charge for some of it. We have to figure out what it is before we figure out all the operations, and we have to figure out what it costs and our staff and our budget. And that's really a board question for us. But we're not starting out with the idea that this is a museum. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that. This is a park building that is a core part of our mission. And if there is a charge for certain kinds of things, maybe, but we are planning classrooms, public, classrooms for the kids of our city. as a core part of this. And we don't charge for those now, or we're not charging for them at Pier 57, where we're also having classroom space. So I think, you know, I don't want people to think that we're trying to build a revenue generator or a museum.
Thanks again, Noreen. It sounds exciting.
Okay, let's try to do a couple more people. Rosa is next, and then Wendy.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hi, Noreen. It's Rosa Chang. How are you doing?
Hi, Rosa.
Congratulations.
Nice to see you. I hear you.
Oh, okay. I'll do this. I almost never do this, but I'll do this. Or at least I think I'm doing this. Hi. I'm a little video shy. I'm obviously a huge fan of yours and a huge, huge fan of the Hudson River Park. I always call it my sanity space. So thank you for everything that you've done. I just want to say thanks for Pier 26. I enjoy that enormously. And all the families that I know that use that space really, really enjoy it so much. And I just want to reiterate that, you know, I would actively support any funding options that we're able to bring to the expansion of the Hudson River Park. And that I do view that as absolutely as essential infrastructure, which I think really came to the fore during coronavirus. So I think I just wanted to reiterate that. I was curious, what's going on with Pier 40? It's been a while.
Yeah, good question, because Pier 40, we are, from the air rights sale to the building that will now be the Google building, but the building being developed by Oxford, we received $100 million from selling air rights from Pier 40, you may remember. And we have been, first charge was fixing all of the piles, approximately 3,600 piles that support this 15-acre structure. And in the wintertime, we approved the 7th of 7 phases of pile repair contracts. So hopefully by spring, every one of those approximately 3,600 piles will have been jacketed and made structurally sound again. So that has been a big effort. We are also at the moment repairing, we had previously repaired, I forget if it's either 2 or 3 phases of the roof, which was also leaking and raining concrete down on parking cars below. And so parking space areas had to be closed previously. We are actually repairing the southern side of the roof right now, and we will be, as part of that, repairing / reintroducing what the space that was known as the passive field that people still played sports on, but that abuts the other sports field that's on the roof there. So we made a commitment to reintroduce the passive sports field as part of this phase of roof repairs that we're doing now. And then we've also been continuing to do a number of other things like life safety systems in the building, other things that are essential. We reopened during COVID, we redid the entire courtyard ball field, and kids have been playing on that throughout COVID. It was sad to actually meet our construction deadline and reintroducing that beautiful ball field space and have it be right at the height of the pandemic, and every day be coming to the park and see no children playing on this courtyard ball field. But we were able to reopen that last, I guess, late spring, when COVID restrictions were eased slightly under the state and city. So that's obviously been in use. And otherwise, you know, with COVID, we are not currently proposing changes in the act, either at Pier 40 or Pier 76 or office uses or anything else like that, because I think our city doesn't know what direction certain types of things are going to go in. So fortunately, we will have a pier that we can continue to have our fine offices in. That will be structurally sound, and kids will be able to play in the wet lab. We spruced up this year, and people have been using that, and a variety of spaces are still open here. But I think our long-term what's next for Pier 40 discussion is something that needs a bit more continued COVID recovery and conversations with the state and city, and some direction on what kind of city is going to emerge after all of this.
Thank you. Hopefully a city with more green space.
That's a good answer.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And I think we have one more, Wendy Chapman. Wendy, unmute
You're
yourself.
on mute.
Thank you. So thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that Pier 40 is not going to fall in the river. That's very good news. My question was actually, it's been a while ago, but we heard that the interim flood protection measure that was going to come in that corner where Stuyvesant meets the park. At one point that was kind of approved as a go ahead, and they were going to do it. And then the last update we got, and Alice can maybe, weigh in if I have it wrong, I think they said that they are not doing that now. Do you know anything about that? Because it just seems to me that I know it won't protect against a Hurricane Sandy, the design, I think elevation there needs to be something like crazy, like 18 feet. But even, if it's 4 feet or whatever that is there a reason that you guys stopped it, or did they not have enough money? I'm curious about that. And then I have a second question just with the building. But I don't know, one will do one at a time.
Sure. We have not stopped anybody's resiliency or flood measures. With respect to Battery Park City's kind of bigger plan to come across the park.
Yeah, I know all about that. That's fine. I'm talking more of the interim that the city does.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the state that was paying for that one. That was like a long time ago, right? 8 years or something, like a long time ago.
That's right.
That we approved. I mean, it was going to alter a bit the basketball court, or the intersection with the basketball court, as I remember. Not eliminate the basketball court, but alter some aspect of the landscape there. And I think Matthews Nielsen may have been involved in the vetting the design. It just
didn't have anything to do with you.
Touch with us for years on that one, so we did not. It's not us, and I don't remember honestly even who was the sponsor.
Right. Okay, so that's very helpful. And then I know it's too early for all of this, but are you going to ask for like the higher measure of and I don't know what the new carbon, because LEED, what we've heard, LEED certification actually is terrible for global warming and carbon. A lot of LEED buildings are actually getting Ds. If a lot of these new buildings that you're walking by, they're not doing well with this new city standard. And I have to say, I don't know the new acronym for the carbon standard that we're looking for, but is that going to be part of, whatever aspirational goals that you have for this building? Obviously you've got to fundraise, but it makes it more expensive. Are you going to put that kind of restriction on whoever comes in, that it needs to be like passive house standard and obviously flood proof and the greenest of green buildings? Is that your aspiration? Or are you going to just you just want it up no matter how it goes up, because you've been waiting so long? And I can totally understand the latter, because everyone has been working so hard for years for this.
I think that no, we don't want any old building of any sort just to check a box. So that said, I don't think we will. I think we will be talking about a desire to have a team that can help guide us on green conversations, but without yet establishing the standard for that. I think what we need to do is learn a bit more about the technologies, the options, the site. And instead of saying we want LEED Platinum from the get-go, which we normally wouldn't do, we would do something that really more lets us pick a qualified team that has the right members on the team to help us achieve, I think, goals. I mean, building an estuarium building for the sanctuary that is a noxious building doesn't seem to go together. So it can't be that, but I can't at the moment promise without having any knowledge of extra costs and whatever else that it's also going to be the, 100% carbon neutral or whatever. I think we just need to increase our knowledge base, and that's something that we'd be happy to talk with you and others about once we know a little bit more. And that's
Right.
about the most honest
And
answer I can provide.
yeah, no, I understand it's early days, but just had to ask the question. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Richard,
Paul,
your hand is
yeah,
up.
if I
Is that
could.
a new hand up?
It's a new hand up. It's a new hand up, but not a handout. So first, I think Rosa got to the one question that I was also going to ask, which is in terms of time frame and any time limitations. Pier 40 looks like it's going to be there for, well, let me put it in context. We've been looking to try to get this estuarium built for coming on 10 years now. So this is a long process, maybe more, maybe yes, Paul's saying maybe closer to 15. In any case, a potential concern is that something on Pier 40 would force the closure of the wet lab before this estuarium gets built. Is it fair to say, Noreen, from your answer before, that there really is nothing on the horizon that we could see that could create an issue at this moment?
Correct. I mean, we wouldn't have invested the effort we made this past summer to spruce up the wet lab. And we brought in a trailer so that we could do eDNA sampling and other water quality sampling. We've invested in that space from our own staff and resources perspective and money. So we wouldn't have done that if something were about to hit. But Pier 40's future is unknown to me and to everybody in terms of long-term future. So I can't say never, but I will say that the wet lab space is really important to our environmental education team right now. It's really important to a lot of people, and we would certainly want, the ideal is, as Wendy just said, we hopefully in 5 years we've got an actual, or before then we've got an actual estuarium, but next year we will have this kind of a tech-oriented environmental education space at Pier 57, which we've been working with the developer there on, which is another educational space for us. It won't have tanks. They're designed to be two different sides of environmental education, the estuarium in Tribeca and the kind of tech-oriented one in Chelsea. But, it would be very disappointing for us to just suddenly lose a space like that and an opportunity like that too. But I can't say never.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you had any sense. Clearly, there's no sense of any deadline at this moment. So that's what was the key question. And that I just wanted to say, having been a part of the decision and the process of transitioning the river project to Hudson River Park, I really want to thank Noreen and Carrie and Tina and Nicolette for having embraced everything about the river project, built on it, continued to build on it, and love it, I think, the way we did. And so I just thank you all for that. And I want to make sure everybody knows how much we appreciate it and how much you've done to continue this work.
Well, Richard, it wouldn't have happened without you and Kathy, and the partnership's been great. So thank you too.
Yes, I was going to say kudos to all of you. There's been some tension in the past, and I'm glad
Sorry.
we're at a better place. Okay, let's see. Alice, did you want to say anything further?
Yeah, I just want to ask one more question about resiliency, which Wendy had brought up and I had forgotten about. I felt like it was just a little short. Could you just elaborate a little more on what the trust is doing with the Battery Park City Authority vis-a-vis the resiliency plans?
We're just waiting for them, Alice. There's nothing new since the last time we talked to you or we talked to them. We haven't heard anything for a couple of months, at least more than a couple of months.
I know they're doing a walkthrough of that very area early next month, so I guess that's something that we'll hear more about. But there's nothing that the trust has not put the kibosh on some of these ideas where they're actually building out into the water along that edge of Chamber Street. Is that?
No, they need, I mean, aside from regulatory permits, they may need a change in the act depending on what they're trying to do there, because our boundaries are set. So if it's part of Battery Park City, that may need a legal change. But we have not literally heard anything for months. And as you know, I think because this committee was hearing from us about what they were telling us, and then the Battery Park City Committee was hearing from them, we asked them to please share the information with everybody. But it's been a number of months since we've had any direct communications with Battery Park City about any of their resiliency plans.
Well, thanks again. And I also just want to give a huge thank you. The park is an unbelievable resource in which I am in every single day. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Okay, great. I think we've covered all the people who are looking to speak. So let me thank you and Kate for coming. And I want to offer my hearty congratulations to you for your new post. You certainly deserve it. It's great to have you in that position, and we look forward to working with you on making the park even better than it is today. But thank you for all you've done, and we look forward to more progress in the future.
Thank you, Paul, and everyone.
You have a great evening. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, committee, let's keep moving. I am going to next give a very quick report on Brooklyn Bridge Banks. Well, let me just say one other thing about Hudson River Park before I forget. We were notified by Hudson River Park that the Citigroup ferry would be continuing the same service until 6 p.m. That they began in July through December 31st. The board staff tells me that we've never gotten any complaints about it. So that is just an FYI. Okay, so let me move on to Brooklyn Bridge Banks. On October 10th, Rosa and I and a few others from the CB attended a Zoom meeting with DOT officials led by Borough Commissioner Ed Pinkar. And one of the items discussed was Brooklyn Banks. As many of you know, we, members of this community board, participated in a walk around of the Brooklyn Banks back at the end of April of this year. And this was the follow-up to that walk around. And that walk around came after the community board passed a resolution back almost a year ago in November of 2020, again asking the city to return that space to the community. It had been for many, many years, over a decade, served as a major park space for our community. I would say that Mr. Pinkar was not too forthcoming regarding what they were thinking about in terms of restoration of the banks to the community as a recreation space. He said he would come back relatively soon with some sort of public space recommendations for that area. I- I've never gotten the impression that he is at all eager to return the space to the community, and we didn't get clear answers as to why the banks needed to remain closed if construction was taking place in other portions of the bridge miles away over the coming years. So anyway, that's the status. I do hope to get him to attend a meeting of this committee and to share his views with the public as soon as I can. So that's my report. Rosa, do you have anything to add, or do you have any other things to quickly update us on Brooklyn Banks?
In terms of update, we are meeting with a whole variety of different organizations and elected current and future elected officials to gather as much support as we can for the project, so that when the time comes, we are able to make sure that there's a strong enough coalition so that we make sure that we get the space back in circulation for our communities. So I would say that's it. I mean, they did say that they would be done with their internal analysis within 2 weeks. I know that 2 weeks has already passed. I don't know if, Diana, I don't know if you're able to tell us if we've heard anything back from them since then.
I
They
haven't heard anything since.
No, okay. They did say that they would be arranging another meeting to discuss whatever their, the results of their internal analysis were, and that one would then include the NYPD Counterterrorism Division as well. So yeah, that's sort of where we are on that. Thank you, Paul.
Great, thank you. I don't see any questions or comments on that, so why don't we try to continue? Another item that had been planned for discussion, new market building demolition, a progress report, will instead go to the Quality of Life Committee, and they're going to hopefully get an update on that on the 21st at their meeting. So with that, the last item that we have is fiscal year 2023 budget response. As you know, we started a discussion on that at the last meeting, and we made some progress. And I think at this point, I'm going to call on Diana to sort of refresh our memories on where we ended that discussion and some of the highlights.
Yeah, thank you. And this is something that's been circulated a couple times via email, but I'm just going to share it in the chat. It's the link to the CB1 budget website, which includes that table with all of last year's requests. So if you want to pull that up on your end, I'm also going to pull it up on my screen in case we want to reference something collectively. And while you're perusing that and refreshing yourselves, I'm going to run through the items that we discussed last month, which we had an opportunity to discuss quite a bit of these, which I'm really happy about because not every committee has a chance to do that. So I will run through these. We talked about combining at least two of the Brooklyn Bridge items. There's one for new active recreation space under the Brooklyn Bridge, and then also one, these are both DOT items for restoring and reopening the Brooklyn Bridge Banks open space. So we talked
Diana,
about,
could you make it larger?
let's see.
Could you,
Is that better?
that's one more step up.
Although
would be
this
perfect
isn't
for
what I'm
me.
just reading from my notes right now.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll continue, and if this isn't large enough, if we need to reference something, I'll try to make it larger. We talked about combining those two items and combining the dugout, the banks, and the other spaces north and south of the Brooklyn Bridge, and to the extent that we can, prioritizing that item as a parks and open space item. We talked about reiterating the request for the new market building and repurposing that site for community use. And specifically a recommendation by David Shelton for incorporating that there should be it should be suitable or appropriate for maritime use. Joe Lerner raised his library east of Broadway item, which has been on in many prior lists and will stay on this list. From Wendy Chapman, the public pool and CD1 item. From Andrew Zeltzer, the idea for a feasibility study for repurposing the Coast Guard building, potentially for multi-use or for a senior use, as suggested by Pat Moore. As Richard Corman raised earlier, the funding for completing the build out of the estuarium. Also from Richard Corman, for the Friends of Finn Square Park, both expense, I believe there's an expense item there now for maintenance, but also a capital item for an expansion. And then there was some generalized discussion about our gripes with the budget process itself, and the idea of maybe cutting down some of the items to prioritize other items, although as I was discussing with Paul earlier, that would really need to be something that is discussed at executive committee, because there would need to be agreement among the board for that strategy, because it wouldn't be effective for one committee or one group to take that approach while others are not. So those are the specific items that I have. And if folks have other items that they want to expand on or specific items that they want to call back to, I'm happy to pull those up.
Okay. Did you mention funding for that Hudson River Park estuarium, some sort of capital? I know we.
Yes, completing the
that's-
build out of the estuarium.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Paul or Diana?
Yeah, Andrew, go.
Apologies, I don't have this up on my screen, but Diana, can you comment on any of the budget items that we submitted last year from Waterfronts and Parks, to the extent they were addressed at all?
But they're all in this chart in terms of agency response. Give me one sec. Let me see. I know that there's a field that captures
I think it's
agency
like at
response.
the end.
We discussed this a little bit last year, and that's part of what kicked off this conversation of our gripes in the budget process. And like Paul was talking about last month, a lot of the things that we've gotten in our community schools, open spaces, have been traditionally more so the result of the development process, and in connection with projects that happen where there are community facilities or amenities that are incorporated in exchange for certain things, and that the budget process, it's very, very common that we get responses that it's not feasible or more information is needed. I can go through each one, but those are very common responses. More information needed, unclear. Let's see.
So, and again, this is a tough, unfair question, but is there anything we can learn from the agency responses where they say unclear, or anything we can anticipate to try and position these for more airtime and possible success?
Yeah, it's always helpful whenever we can add more specificity on any item. Although, for instance, this item replace the current pathway material at City Hall Park with the more durable bluestone. I see listed here that it was listed as more information needed. For some of these agencies, I know we have specific follow-up consultations, and Lucian handles a lot of this with the Parks Department. You know, we can fill in as needed, although, I mean, I can't comment for the specific agencies, but I would imagine that if there was a will to do these things, they could be done. You know, if these agencies were interested in something like replacing the bluestone, it would not be difficult to reach out for any additional information that they need. But I just don't know the extent I can comment on those things.
No, fair point. Thank you.
I have a question on Finn Square. Have we seen any plans for the improvement that we're endorsing? I'm not sure if we have.
Richard, do you have any information on that, on the
Yeah, I actually don't. I thought that Finn Square had presented something, at least I was told some years ago, I'm not sure. I was not involved then, so I don't know if that's true or not. And so far as I know, they haven't been back to the community board since. I think
All right, so
I've
maybe
met with them and I've spoken with them, but I haven't gotten any specific plans. It's relatively modest what they're looking to do, just kind of extend out to it's not a major, let's just put it this way, it's not a major expansion, but it's certainly appropriate for us to get some more detail from them.
Richard, do you have a contact that you can send me? I'm happy to reach out to
Sure.
them for this
Yes, I
specific.
do.
maybe
Yes, I do. I'll send that.
maybe just double check that we didn't do a resolution on this in the past. Because if we did and we supported something, then we could just cite that.
Yeah, I was told that we had, I never find them. This could be
All
my
right.
search capability.
I don't recall, but that's not necessarily the end of the story. Okay. Any other comments on the budget?
Hi, this is Rosa. I had a couple of comments. One, it sort of feels like we're like tossing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. And I'm wondering, is there a more strategic approach? Like what is the prerequisite to actually getting a favorable response? Do we know how we could either word it or how we could, does it need to be whittled down? Does it need to be increased? Like, how do we get a better response to all of the various things? Because there must be a method. It's right now it seems like madness, and I'm wondering what is the method to this madness, because all of the different committee meetings that we sat through or that I've been listening in on as relates to budget, it seems like it's this bizarre grayed out crystal ball that and it's just coming up fuzzy, like so we're literally just like throwing stuff at it but without any real hope for results. And so I'm wondering, where do we get the answer of how do we get results on this so that we can sort of fine tune our approach to actually get the funding for the projects that we'd like to have funded. So that, I guess that was one question. The second one was in the environmental committee meeting the other night. I remember that it came up, I think Alice brought it up, that there's actually no budget for the Green Streets program in Manhattan because I guess it's 1,000 times more expensive to do in Manhattan than it is to do in Queens. So does it make sense to keep it in, to keep pushing for it with the acknowledgement that the DEP has no budget for it, or can we convince them somehow to put Manhattan in as a budget item? So how does that work? And then last one was just as a comment to Joe Lerner's library. I just wanted to say that we are working to try and get a library within the vaults of the actual Brooklyn Bridge. And so we hope that there will be a library on the east side of Broadway to address that, because I know that's been on the CB wish list for many, many years. So that was it, all three.
I'll take a crack at it.
Oh, go ahead,
Right,
Jen.
and I think that was a apt description of what a lot of the community board work feels like, right? Is kind of throwing these things into the void. And just like something like submitting to 311 can often feel like you are throwing something out there that doesn't end up anywhere, or it doesn't have the gravity that it should, or you put effort into these things and they don't go anywhere. But just like anything else or many other things that we do at the community board, and I'll use Brooklyn Bridge as an example, if those were just items in the past, they have been items that we've listed on the budget request, and if it's something that you include once in a budget request and don't follow up on, then it is typically unlikely to see progress in that area. But in this last year, the more effort and organization that's put behind those things, And when you keep bringing them up to your elected officials, if there are community organizations that rally around these items to keep advocating for them, it really makes a big difference. And we've seen progress in those areas. The more specific we can be, if we could follow up with resolutions, you need to keep coming back at these things. And we have seen progress in these areas. And it's also, these budget documents have also been helpful and useful in terms of, I know when they were putting the 5 World Trade Center RFP together, these are documents that are referenced in regards to specific projects in terms of understanding what the community's needs and priorities are. So in a roundabout way, these are useful tools in understanding priority and need. But in terms of individual items, I think that specificity and that follow-up are really key items. For green streets, there is a green infrastructure item, and that is one I think that would require a significant amount of organization and follow-up on for expansion of that specific program, but it is captured here. And I think we can probably add more specifics after last night's meeting and these discussions about DEP. And I've been, just this morning, I was speaking with DEP about that kind of stormwater stuff. Yes, and your library item, I had noted that from the September meeting as a part of the Brooklyn Bridge item. But those are my initial responses. Paul, if you have anything to add, you have a lot of experience in this. So
Yeah, I agree with most of what, just about everything you said. I think that's very accurate. And Rosa, I think the way you're going about, gathering all types of support for Brooklyn Banks is, hopefully will be the case model that you could go teach to students at graduate schools for public administration on how to get things done. And, it's my motto at the community board was always patience and persistence. Unfortunately, as was just briefly mentioned, I mean, even a project like Hudson River Park, you have no idea how many years there was gridlock on that project being made at all. And it was so frustrating, and it just lay barren, and the piers were just deteriorating and nothing was happening. And you just have to keep at these things. I am a believer that sometimes the best way to get these things done, unfortunately, is to work with these developers. It's not always the best way, but it certainly has worked for this community board in many cases. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. Alice, were you trying to get in on this?
No, not on that, but I just wanted to just clarify for Rosa that there's green streets and green infrastructure. Green streets became in green infrastructure, and it's a little bit of a nuanced distinction between Green Street and then the green stormwater streets. And that what was staggering is there are no stormwater street plans in Manhattan, but there are indeed green streets. And so I just wanted to make that.
All right, but I guess your committee would probably take the lead on that project anyway. So
yeah,
I mean,
and it's a voice for redundancy though in all of these, because as you know, if we see it in, there are many departments that have capital on all of these, so that it'll repeat itself in DPR as well as DEP as well as DEC, whatever, anyway.
Okay, well, I'm sure there's support for that amongst
well,
people.
Paul, I see Carrie Davidson is on. I just saw in the chat that she has info on Finn Square. So
Oh,
Carrie, give me 1 second. Let me find you in the list here so I can unmute you. Go ahead, Carrie.
Thanks, Diana. I talked to Patricia, that's the contact at Finn Square, and I'm happy to give that contact to you guys. I'm sure Richard has it already, but what they are hoping to do is a sidewalk rebuild as one part of it. I don't know if it's expanded more than that project, but they were looking at a fencing and sidewalk plan, because their sidewalks, if you've been over there, are undulating. So I think that was part of what we're hoping to accomplish. And from the Friends of Dwayne Park side, listening to this budget conversation, and that's why I tuned in tonight, I would like to ask that we be at least mentioned on the list. We were, of course, you guys approved our plan for the reclamation of the old park footprint. And we've raised 150 in a silent sort of a capital campaign. So we feel pretty comfortable that our number is going to be 400, consistent with the estimates. And if there was, some way to indicate that the community board is willing to put some financial backing behind it, I think that would go a long way with the Parks Department in moving us into a capital project designation. So if that's possible, I would like to ask that. And I should have reached out earlier when Alice asked at the presentation we gave for more information about the budget process and how that can be useful as the Parks Department is looking at its prioritization of capital projects in the community. So if it's not too late to ask for that, I would be delighted to see Dwayne Park added to that laundry list of projects in the community. There's one more update. I received an email from Commissioner Pinkar today saying that they are going to put the city bike station along the southern perimeter of Dwayne Park. And, I'm disappointed, of course, but it's not to exclude or preclude our continuing that capital project. In fact, when I spoke to him today, we talked about sort of parallel play. So it fits the needs apparently of requests made by Community Board 1 in regards to relocating the station in front of Hideaway. And so they're honoring that request, I'm told. And since we have to go through the process of working through capital projects before we can have our sidewalks aren't instantly created. So this seems to be, although disappointed, not a bad outcome for the restaurants on the block while we undergo that process. So just an update.
Carrie, I'm sorry, I missed, where are they going to move the city bike?
Along the southern perimeter of the park fence, which is on the south side of Duane Street, the southern fork on our fence line. So where we want to add the sidewalk, they want to put the city bike station. And so,
that stinks.
Well, I try not to get to, like I think Paul said, patience and persistence. I think those were the words.
Yes.
And so I've been here a long time. I'm not going anywhere. So I am patient and I am persistent. So my plan is to keep pushing for that capital project. And, I firmly believe that Dwayne Park's, sidewalk resiliency, pedestrian mobility, and greenery and open space desires adds a huge public benefit. So when we start weighing public benefit, I'm confident that at the end of the day, long term, that our vision for the street will be successful. I personally don't think that the data supports additional bikes in our grid at this time, but I'm not a person to tell DOT their business. I've pointed them to all the data that I know and hope that they find the same outcome, but apparently they have not. So.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that report and for all you continue to do for the community.
Thank you, Paul.
Let me just add a couple of quick things. One is that, as you all know, we have elections coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're going to have a whole new set of elected officials. So we're going to have new mayors, new borough president, new council member. And I think, those people will have a lot to say about every one of the projects that we talk about. So, and I would also mention that those people end up getting what's sometimes called member items to help build projects within their districts. So that's another way to raise funds for a bunch of projects, and that has been done in the past as well. So, okay. Let's see, do we have anything else before we wrap up our conversation on the budget?
Paul and Diana, I found some communications on Finn Square Park, including the proposal, and I'm forwarding them to you both
Great,
now.
good work, thank you. And just personally, I would, every time I see how beautiful Hudson River Park is, it just reminds me yet again of of the paucity of any kind of green space on the other side of the district. So I think that needs to continue to be a high priority for this board, especially with all the families that continue to move into the financial district, et cetera. Okay, but we are supporting several of those projects, so it's already in there. Let's see, who needs to be called on? Mark Amoruso, you want to have a say in this?
Hi, Paul. Sorry, I was late. I didn't chance to review all of it. Is there anything in there with regards to funding the beach, Brooklyn Bridge, the beach issues, and do we have anything in there for that?
I don't know if we have it, but certainly the borough president at her most recent report to the community board
Right.
seemed to indicate that that project was coming along. I don't know. She didn't go into great details, but
I think we should maybe add something, considering, like you said, they're going to be a whole new set of elected officials coming up, and at least we have it on the record.
yeah,
Line or two
we've
for that.
supported that in the past. So
Okay, yeah, we have.
you got
All
that
right.
done?
Thanks. Thank you.
I got it. I'll note it for discussion at executive, and let me also follow up on, I don't know how final the plans are. Of course, what once was the Brooklyn Bridge Beach is now the Brooklyn Bridge Esplanade project, but we have supported strongly, going back to the East River Blueway plan, that beach. So let me get more
Okay.
information and I'll note it in the list for our committee.
Okay. Are we not voting on this, or?
No, this is for discussion. Executive will be
Oh,
voting.
right. Okay.
tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
I'm actually
Thanks
touring
thanks
the
for noting
project.
that. Yeah, that's near and dear to a lot of folks, the beach. So.
Okay, we got it.
I'm actually
Um,
touring Gail Brewer around the bridge tomorrow morning, so I will ask her about that because that's definitely a merging of interests there.
Yeah,
Great.
Rosa, find out and let me know, please.
Okay, I
Yeah,
will. As soon
Thank
as I
you.
finish the tour, I'll email you.
The key question is what we have in our resolutions in the past is unfettered access to the beach, quote unquote.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll try to find out and get back to you guys with anything.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Rosa.
You're welcome.
All right. I don't see any other hands. So unless anyone has a last comment, I guess I'm going to close the discussion. I think we've had a good one about the budget, and I will bring it back to the executive committee meeting. That's all of tomorrow night. So that will take place. And Diana, if you could just share some of your notes with me between now and then, that would be great. Okay, any new business or old business? Okay. In that case, I wish you all a good evening, and we'll see you, I guess, probably at the full board meeting next week.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Paul. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Andrew.
Good night.